We're going to fire it up and say, welcome to September's Manuscript Monday, Darwin's Life and Autographs, The Evolution of a Collection by Dr. Barton Smith. It's Labor Day. We're so glad you decided to join us on Labor Day. Mr. Dr. Smith is the only one who's laboring. We're just going to sit back and enjoy that too. So we're glad you joined us. We go about an hour. We're going to wrap up at 9 o'clock. I'll tell you a little bit about the Manuscript Society, some programs that are coming up, and then Dr. Smith will go wild, as they say. So welcome to the program. We do this every Monday, and it's usually the first Monday of the month. Who's our sponsor? It's sponsored by the Manuscript Society. We're celebrating our 75th year. We're an organization that is an educational organization, a 501c3 organization that exists to preserve and protect manuscripts, to educate the public about the importance of manuscripts, to use manuscripts for historical research and history. And we have a scholarship program and a variety of awards and grants to help people continue to do that too. So why a webinar? It's the easiest and fastest way to reach as many people as we possibly can. You can sit at home and sip a cup of coffee or sip a glass of wine or whatever you like and enjoy the program as well. Why now? Well, it's just a good time, first Monday of the month. Who was invited? We invited people from the Manuscript Society, certainly our members. We have a variety of other organization FABs that we're tied in with, the Society of American Archivists, several of the appraisal associations, and some collectors associations as well. I'll tell you what we're going to cover in just a little bit, and then later on in the program, I'll tell you how you can get a little bit more information. So here's what we're going to cover. It's an insider's look at the fascinating life of Charles Darwin through the incredible autograph collection of Dr. Barton Smith. Dr. Smith's going to share some amazing letters, manuscripts from his extensive Darwin collection, and we're just going to see the tip of the iceberg, maybe not even the tip of the iceberg tonight, because he's got more for us further down the road, I'm sure. Dr. Barton Smith is, which I put your name in twice, and I apologize, is a retired gastroenterologist, the past president of the Manuscript Society, and an amazing, accomplished pianist. I have a couple of his CDs, which he has graciously given me over the years. I listen to him regularly. He's a great guy, and I'm very excited to have him with us today. You know you're going to love his program. If you have any technical questions, I sent you a little message in the chat box with my cell phone number. You can text me if you have any problems. Later on in the program, we're going to have an opportunity. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions. We'll open things up so you'll be able to turn your mic on. Probably not your cameras, but your mic's on, and you can ask Barton anything you may have questions about as we move forward. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen for a moment, and I'm going to share. Let Barton share his screen. So let me find out where that just went. Let me get out of this and get out of this. And let's share your screen. Here we go. Where did that go? Where are you? Where are you? There it is. It just went away. There we go. Okay. Panelist, sure. There we go. I'm going to make you the host. Now there, Barton, and then you can use that little share screen down at the bottom there to share your screen. Hi, Shirley. Shirley's here.
I press that.
So press it. Go.
Click it. That. Yeah, that. Click that. Click this little icon there.
There we go, and we see your screen.
That little screen there. Start from again there.
So we had a bit of hyperbole from New Jersey there, that praised by Brian, but thank you anyway. As you can see, I'm coming to you from Downhouse, 15 miles south of London, from Charles Darwin's study. In this study, he spent 40 years doing biologic and botanical experiments. He wrote, over the years, he wrote 21 volumes of books, 17 different books in 21 volumes. He wrote many periodical articles in journals, and he published about 230 pages a year of text for 40 years. That's a lot of publishing. So we have a long way to go. He had about 2,000 correspondents, His letters have been collected, archived, and I would suggest if you have any interest at all, that you look online at the Darwin Correspondence Project, which has about 15,000 letters or more, plus a lot of information about Charles. So the road to enlightenment is long and difficult, Clyburn says, but you don't need sandwiches and change of clothes. I think if you have a little glass of sherry and a pinch of snuff, you would be right in with Darwin. And we're going to try to cover about the first 40 years of his life. The illustrations are all from my collection. The pictures were taken, the photos for this presentation were taken by my friend Bill Ulrich, who is a professional photographer, a technical help by my son Phil. And let me check this. We may as well start with since I showed that one illustration, I start with an autograph. My first autograph is Clyburn's autograph and his cat.
Barton, I'm going to interrupt just 1 second. Shirley, can you just turn your camera off and your mic? I can't do it from my end here.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Oh, your camera's on and your mic's on.
I don't know why.
Oh, I don't either, and I can't seem to turn you off. So I just
Well, then I'll just exit then. See you guys later.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Come back in again. See if you can turn off the mic. It won't go off, huh?
I don't know. Goodbye.
Okay. Okay. Barton, you're back. All right.
All these illustrations are from my collection, except for there's a picture of the B. Altman department store and a picture of the map of the Beagle, which I got from online sources. I read this book in 1961, Cornell Medical College dormitory in Manhattan. 1961, a break from Gray's Anatomy. I picked this up, and I recommend this to everybody too. It's a wonderful, concise joint biography by William Irving. I'll just make one quote from him. Darwin's investigation was not only central to scientific thought in many fields, it placed him directly athwart almost every great issue in philosophy, ethics, and religion. Okay, you know, for the autograph collector what that means. It means endless associations. I started my collection 16 years after that, about 30 blocks south and 6 blocks east, 5th Avenue and 34th Street, B. Altman's department store. It was before this picture. There was an autograph department, which my friend Ken Rendell tells me was run by a woman by the name of Roseanne Slifer. In any case, B. Altman's had this autograph, which I didn't know you could get. Here's a letter of Charles Darwin. I bought it, and that became the most expensive shopping trip in the history of the Smiths, because it led to my finding out about the Manuscript Society and about other dealers, such besides Ken Rendell, Paul Richards, Mary Benjamin, and Conway Barker. Then many dealers, particularly John Wilson and Henry Bristow in England. So I'm grateful to all of them. But here's Darwin's letter. It's a letter about this Charles Lovegrove, who's addressed to. That's the envelope down in the corner. Charles Lovegrove was a church warden in the Down Church, and this is just saying Darwin wants to know about the pedigree of his pony, kind of thing that Charles was interested in all the time. Serendipity in collecting. After I started collecting some years later, I found this document of 1863. It's a petition to the Honorable Chairman of the Highway Board and other gentlemen. It's by about 40 residents of the village of Down, including Charles Darwin, as you can see right down there, about the third from the top. And amazingly enough, I didn't know when I got this, but below that, three signatures below that, lo and behold, I have Charles Lovegrove's signature now. So just the kind of thing that we really like, the serendipity of collecting is really pretty neat. Onward. Start with Charles Darwin's life. This 3-page amazing vellum document from 1781. It is a marriage contract. It is by Charles Darwin's grandfather, Erasmus. His signature is down there in the lower left. Charles' father Robert's mother was Mary, Erasmus Darwin's first wife. Mary and Erasmus had 5 children. Then a widower, Erasmus didn't want to give up children, so he had 2 children with his children's governess, two daughters who were well accepted into the Darwin family. But then he ran into this woman whose signature is down here, Elizabeth Pole, down here in the left lower middle of the document. Elizabeth Pole was a widow, and in 1781 he married her. And this is their marriage document. If you're like me, your eyes are going to glaze over when you get through the first 2 sentences. So I can't tell you what sort of prenup they had. In any case, Erasmus was famous in his own right. This is not him, this is Robert. But Erasmus was famous. He was a physician, a philosopher, an inventor, and a writer. He wrote several big tomes on zoology and botanic topics. He wrote about farming. He invented farm machinery, and he was very well known. He had a theory of evolution which anticipated Lamarck, that is, the inheritance of acquired characteristics. So he was Lamarckism before Lamarck. I have another letter of his, which I'm not showing, but which is very interesting, which discusses vaccination. This is Charles' father. Both Charles' father, Robert, and Erasmus were gigantic men. They were over 6 feet tall, and they both weighed well over 300 pounds. Robert was a physician also. This is a rare letter of Robert Darwin, Charles' father, physician and an investor. Was a very successful investor, a very successful physician, but this is Robert Darwin. It's an interesting letter. He's ordering some thermometers to use in his practice. This is the house Darwin was born in, called the Mount. It's in Shrewsbury. Again, the funny British pronunciation. This is Shrewsbury, the Mount. It's still there. Darwin was born on February 12th, 1809. The same day that somebody else famous was born in Hodgenville, Kentucky, namely Abraham Lincoln. They never met, obviously, but the Darwin family lived here. Robert Waring Darwin, his father, Susanna Wedgwood, from the Pottery family, was Darwin's mother. Darwin born in 1809. Mother died when he was 8 years old in 1817. He had 1 younger sister, a couple older sisters, and 1 older brother, Erasmus. I have now notice his sister Caroline also married Wedgwood. So Robert Waring Darwin married Wedgwood. Carolyn Darwin, his daughter, married Wedgwood. Charles Darwin married Emma, was a Wedgwood. Later on, the second husband of his sister Emily was a Wedgwood. I have autographs of 7 of the people on this thing, this pedigree. This amazing document, the Shrewsbury School, the prospectus. This is from, I think, 1829. It was a school run by the Reverend Archdeacon Butler. This Samuel Butler was the grandfather of the novelist, The Way of All Flesh, Samuel Butler. Samuel Butler, the grandson, also had interaction with Darwin later in life, which we're not going to cover. I tried to figure out how much you had to pay to go to the Shrewsbury School, and I figured out it's probably, with everything, it would probably amount to about $6,000 a year today. But it's probably a lot more than that in today's dollars. The interesting thing about this, besides having the terms, is that this document has a blank page in the back. On the inside, it has a blank page. Here's Samuel Butler, the headmaster, his autograph. And this is the long letter he's describing to the parent of a prospective student or 2 students, how they could get in. The school was actually full up. Darwin went here from ages 8 and a half to 9 to 16. Here's what he said about his time at Shrewsbury School. Nothing could have been worse for the development of my mind than Dr. Butler's school. I don't think that was true, but he thought so. He taught himself a lot. This is a book that he read. This is Gilbert White's Antiquities, Natural History of Selborne. This is a beautiful copy in leather, very well preserved. It has marbled end papers. It was apparently given, it's a copy of 1887. The original edition was published in 1740. The original was 1789, The Natural History of Antiquities of Selborne. And this edition is a later edition, 1887. But in any case, it's a beautiful book. As far as I can see, the student who got it as a prize from the school didn't read it because most of the pages are uncut. This is a rare autograph of Gilbert White. This note down here in the right-hand corner says, received then of Mr. Gilbert White, 5 weeks' wages for this maid, Catherine Kindred. She couldn't write, this is her mark, 20 shillings for 5 weeks. She could not afford to send her kids to the school. Gilbert White is interesting because this is a wonderful book, still readable. You can visit his parsonage where he was a preacher, where the church, and he is called England's first ecologist. Also of interest, the Oxford English Dictionary says that Gilbert White was the first to use an X in a letter as a sign of here's a kiss for you. X marks the kiss. This copy of the burial register is just of interest because it's an entrance for Gilbert White in 1792 when he died. Darwin did chemistry experiments with his brother Erasmus. He collected insects and stones, and he really obviously did a lot of self-education. But when the time came, he had to be sent off for a career, and his father said, well, you're going to be a physician. So he sent him to Edinburgh to medical school. Darwin did not take well to the medical school curriculum. He thought the courses were dull. The two surgeries that he witnessed were frightening as everything, probably because they didn't have anesthesia. One was on a child, so he was pretty well put off by this. His year and a few months in Edinburgh were saved by friends like this man, Leonard Horner, a letter which is much later, 1861, to Hooker, who we will meet later on. But it's interesting association. Horner was Darwin's friend, about the same age, and was a friend throughout his life. This is another student at Edinburgh who Darwin associated with by the name of Robert Grant. Two interesting letters. The one is thanking his friends for a gift of an annuity, and the other is this letter, which is a reply to someone asking him to come and give lectures. He was a zoologist, specialist in marine biology. He and Darwin collected marine invertebrates from the shores of Edinburgh while Darwin was there. And Grant was in contact with him again, like for most of his life. He was a professor. And this letter is talking about giving a lecture, and his fee for the lecture was 5 guineas, which was £1, and which a guinea was 21 shillings, £1 and 1 guinea. So he was getting more for one lecture, a lot more than the maid got. One autograph of one of Darwin's teachers at the Medical College of Edinburgh. This is Robert Jameson. Jameson was a botanist and natural history, was professor of natural history at the medical school. And Darwin is on record, written in his biography, as calling Jameson's lectures incredibly dull. And he said Jameson was an old dry stick. Finally, Darwin's sisters, who were his correspondents, got the clue that he was unhappy in Edinburgh, and they went to Papa and said, you can't leave Charles in Edinburgh, he's unhappy. So it was determined that Darwin would come back to enter Cambridge university to be on the track to become a clergyman. And he was perfectly content with this. This would be October of 1827. He had to bone up on his Latin and Greek to pass the examination. Now, I think he should give a little credit because he's fortunate that the main subjects at the Shrewsbury School that Dr. Butler ran for him were Latin and Greek. Among the subjects were Latin and Greek. In any case, Darwin came back to Cambridge. He stayed in this building. His rooms at first were in this building, and they are said to be the same rooms that were occupied by a man by the name of William Paley. Reverend William Paley is, again, another very interesting character. I'm fortunate to have a couple interesting documents of his. Not this one, but another letter. It was written in 1873, and the letter is from one of the higher clergy saying, you've got to finish your book on the principles of moral and political philosophy. And Paley writes in this letter, I'm going to finish it by next summer, which would have been 1873, but he actually only finished in 1875. When he finished it, that book, Principles of Moral and Political Philosophy, became required reading, and it was for I think almost 100 years required reading for students getting into going to Cambridge. And here was Darwin accepting the course of religion and accepted what Paley's had to say. This letter is later on when Paley's more in the academic world. He's resigning. Paley is writing to the one of the higher clergy saying he's resigning as Archdeacon of Carlisle. This is a book from my collection, of first edition, 1802, of Natural Theology or Evidence of the Existence and Attributes of the Deity collected from the Appearances of Nature. The famous book by William Paley, in which he uses the analogy of God as the watchmaker of the universe. And nice first edition. So, while he was in college, and the years at Cambridge were 1827 to 31, he spent a lot of time collecting beetles. He spent a lot of time out during hunting season, riding the brush, hunting. But he fortunately had a very good education. He had three excellent teachers who I'm going to show. The first was John Stevens Henslow. John Stevens Henslow was natural history and mainly botanist. He became a mentor and a friend, and it was very important in Darwin's life. Darwin remained in contact with him. Henslow received from the voyage of the Beagle. Darwin sent to Henslow the specimens as he collected them, and a lot of letters. And Darwin and Henslow put these letters before the various scientific societies, so that by the time he got home, was one of the reasons that Darwin was very well known was because of Henslow. This letter mentions Professor Ewell, who we'll meet in a second, and it was written as a secretary of one of the professional societies. The academic professors, unless they were independently wealthy, which many of them were, they usually had to get jobs as secretaries of some of these scientific societies. They got paid positions. This is a letter by Sedgwick. Adam Sedgwick was a geologist who got Darwin started on the very important subject of geology, which became very important to Darwin. Darwin went on several expeditions out in the countryside with Sedgwick, the last one just a few months before he left on the Beagle, and Sedgwick was important. This is just a social letter. The next letter is from William Ewell. Ewell is of interest. He was a professor of astronomy and philosophy, and he coined a lot of terms in the scientific field, including the term scientist. Before he coined the term scientist, people who studied subjects like zoology and botany were called natural historians, or math or everything else. They were called natural historians, but Ewell coined the term scientist. In any case, Henslow, Sedgwick, and Whewell were big teachers and good teachers, but they all had trouble when The Origin of Species was published. They all had trouble accepting it, and in fact, Whewell actually prevented it from being he banned it from the library of Trinity College at Cambridge for a few years before he let it in. Whewell, unfortunately, died when he fell off his horse. So Darwin has finished his studies. Robert Fitzroy had returned from South America, the first voyage of the Beagle, surveying. At the end of the voyage, Fitzroy had taken over for the first. He took over for the first captain of the Beagle, who committed suicide. Too bad. Anyway, Fitzroy was looking for a companion and someone to be the natural historian, to be the scientific expert on this coming voyage of the Beagle. I have here's an autograph, the close of a letter years later, 1859, by Fitzroy. Fitzroy, later in his career, was in charge of the meteorology division of the Navy. He became an admiral, and he was in charge of meteorology, and he did a lot of pioneering work in the field of meteorology for those days. He was giving a watch. He was ordering a watch to give to Captain Henry Troyan, who was in the Navy for good service. He was getting a watch, and this is just ordering the watch and telling what to inscribe on it. Fitzroy had to write to his superior to get permission for this position he was proposing, which in any case was unpaid. Darwin was not paid for his time so this is a letter from Darwin's superior, Francis Beaufort or Beaufort. This man is known as the discoverer, famous for setting up the Beaufort wind scale, the wind force scale, which is still in use today. If you don't have instruments, you look at the surroundings and you can express what the wind scale, what the winds are by using Beaufort's scale. It is an interesting letter because it was a sort of a touching letter. It was written to his daughter. Apparently, a daughter and son-in-law had sent him a lamp, and then so this got him going. He was thanking them for the lamp, but he's also saying, "In the days of my youth, my two favorite stories were Robinson Crusoe and the Arabian Nights." It was sort of interesting. Beaufort was interesting. In any case, Beaufort said yes. The yes was passed down the line to try to find someone to take this position as the naturalist on the Beagle, and the decision by a couple people was made that it would be the writer of this letter, Leonard Jenyns. Leonard Jenyns was a son-in-law of the teacher Henslow, who I just mentioned. This is just a letter talking about where a botanical letter later on. But in any case, Jenyns had finished Cambridge and was settled into a parsonage. He was a clergyman, and he said he couldn't go on the journey. He couldn't take the position, so that's how Darwin got it. Darwin got it, of course, after he convinced his father, with the aid of his uncle Josiah Wedgwood. Jenyns' story wasn't finished though, because when Darwin finished his collections, when he got back from the Beagle, he had a lot of zoological collections, which he farmed out to be described and published. And Leonard Jenyns described the fish from the organization of the Beagle. So how about the Beagle? Look at this, pretty picture, right? Pretty picture. This is a ship that's about 92 feet long and about 26 feet wide. It was commanded by, in this voyage now, by Fitzroy, who is 26 years old. Darwin is 22. They left on a 5-year voyage, which went around the world. When they left England, they had 74 people on board. That's the Beagle. This is not my picture, but this, I think it's from the Encyclopedia Britannica. I got it online. The Beagle left December 27th, 1831, Plymouth. It sailed to South America, across the ocean. It was at sea. It was out for nearly 5 years, just short of 5 years, returned in October of 1836. Ended up going South America, around the world, back to Falmouth in October of 86. It spent most of the time, the largest amount of time was spent mapping the coast of South America, both the east and west coasts. Although they were at sea as long as, I think one voyage, probably across the Pacific, was 533 days at sea. That's a lot for your money. Darwin was seasick a lot of the time that they were at sea, but he spent months on shore in South America. He made many collecting trips. He collected botanical and zoologic specimens, both live and fossils. He spent most of his time doing geologic observations and work. He had eight long inland expeditions covering nearly 3,000 miles. For example, in August of 1833, he covered nearly 1,000 miles down here in Patagonia. And he wrote up, you could read the voyage of the Beagle that he wrote up, his travel log is very interesting. And he had a lot of adventures, which we don't have time to go into. From the voyage of the Beagle, I have one crewman. This was an officer and surveyor by the name of John Lawrence Stokes. It's a sort of a social letter, but Stokes is of great interest to me because he was the only person that we know of who was on all 3 voyages of the Beagle. The one before, the one with Darwin, and then the subsequent 3rd voyage of the Beagle. That was John Lawrence Stokes. There was also Conrad Martens, who was called the draftsman. He was really the artist. He replaced the original artist, Augustus Earle, who left because he was ill, left the ship, left the Beagle after they got to in 1833, shortly after they got to South America. Conrad Martens took over and stayed on the ship until they got down to Australia. I don't have his autograph, but I have this a rare, I hope it's rare because it was very expensive, book which I bought in Australia. And this is Martens' self-portrait. This is an illustration that he made of the Beagle in the Beagle Channel down in Tierra del Fuego. Some of the natives. Now you may know, but the Beagle, when it sailed with Darwin and Fitzroy, when it sailed in the 2nd voyage, it brought back several natives of Tierra del Fuego who had been taken back to England on the 1st voyage. They were brought back and taken back to, they pretty much reverted to savagery immediately. A pretty savage, pretty rough life living in Tierra del Fuego. Okay. Beagle's main emphasis was on geology in the voyage. And the geology he learned from the book of this man, Charles Lyell, volume 1 of Lyell's Principles of Geology, volume 1 of the 3-volume work were printed before they left. And actually Fitzroy gave Darwin as a gift this book. This is an autograph by Lyell. It's important. Actually, it refers to paleontology. It refers to extinct species in the glacial period. And it's a fragment signed by Lyell. Lyell became a friend of Darwin's and was a friend until he died some years before Darwin. But he was an amazing man. He studied law, but practiced law briefly. He devoted his life to geology. at the conclusion of the Beagle voyage, Darwin had about 39. Darwin had 24 books of notes, and about 80% of them had to do with geology. And he always credited Lyell as being a big part of his successful geologic writings and explanations. There were also surviving from Darwin's voyage 39 letters to his father and his sisters. It's interesting. Back in London, back in Falmouth. I'm sorry, I'm going to back up a bit. On this voyage, I just wanted to say, on the voyage where they finished in South America, they went to the Galapagos. You know the story of the Galapagos, it's well known. We could talk about it in the future, but I just wanted to say that they visited, spent time in Australia, particularly in Tasmania. And I was able to visit. There's several places in Tasmania where Darwin stayed, and he actually celebrated his 27th birthday there. And later in life, when the people asked him, they said, well, if you had to live anywhere else, where would you like to live? And he said Tasmania. And I think there's some of us in our family who would say, yeah, Tasmania would not be a bad choice. It really is a little slice of Victorian England even today. Anyway, that was Darwin in Australia. Now he's back in London. He stays in London with his brother Erasmus. Erasmus graduated from medical school, never practiced. He lived a life of leisure and social life in London. In the social life, he met various people, including people like Humboldt. Darwin knew Humboldt from his books about exploration. Humboldt was his idol, in fact, who said, I should do exploration as well. There's a photo of Humboldt and a letter which is unintelligible and untranslatable as far as I can see, but I think, again, it's a social letter. I don't think it's anything important. Back in London, he not only met Humboldt, but he also met people like Charles Babbage and Thomas Carlyle, brushed elbows with a lot of famous people when he felt up to being out in the social world. In the meantime, he read the Principles of Population written by Thomas Malthus. Malthus' book, first published in 1798, revised in 1803. This is a social letter, but signed by Malthus, I think a very rare signature. And this is the book, his Principles of Population, which gave both Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace the idea of survival of the fittest, the competition among species for resources. So Malthus was a gigantic influence in the history of evolution. Now, Erasmus, I just thought I'd show this because this is another vellum legal document. It's a deed. The brothers and sisters, the Darwin brothers and sisters, were giving a cottage on the mount, the family homestead in Shrewsbury. They were deeding this cottage to Erasmus. So it's the only signature I have, Erasmus. And this down here in the right lowermost signature is Erasmus Darwin. That is Darwin's brother. Darwin's signature is there on the left. His sister, Carolyn Wedgwood, that's the only other sibling I have, but her system is on this. The Parkers were cousins from the Wedgwood side of the family. But this is a nice little document with Erasmus's signature. So Darwin settled down. He was writing up like crazy. He was doling out his specimens, and he finally decided he needed to get married. So he figured out that Emma was the one, and he married his cousin Emma Wedgwood. They married on January 29th, 1838. They settled in their first house in London. They had 2 children. 2 years later, 4 years later, in 1842, they now have 2 children. They say it's time to move, and he finds this house in the village of Down. in the county shire of Kent, 15 miles from London. It suited them perfectly. It's where the study is that I'm sitting in right now. And it's very well preserved. We visited years ago. Since then, it's owned by one of the heritage trusts. Since then, they've added a tea shop and a gift shop. We missed those, unfortunately. But it is a very nice place, very well preserved. His yard and his garden. It was in this. I'm just going to show. I didn't dig up a picture of Emma, but Emma was the perfect wife for him. She not only was willing to have all the children he wanted to have, but she was his secretary. She often wrote letters for him. This letter is one that I recently published in Manuscripts or in the Manuscript News, ordering his suspenders. But this is the letter about one of his writings, a translation written to the German translator saying he made a serious error. And this letter is in the handwriting of Emma. So that's what I have of Emma. I don't have her autograph, but we have her handwriting. Okay, so the Darwins had 10 children. Anne Elizabeth died when she was 10. The second daughter lived only 24 days, and the last son lived 2 years, but was never had a failure of development, was severely disabled. Of Darwin's sons, 3 of them, George, Francis, and Horace, were knighted, but Darwin himself never got knighted. But he ended up better off in the end anyway. Leonard Darwin, I have autographs of all the men except Horace. And Horace's is a horrible story to me because John Wilson in England knew that I wanted Horace Darwin's autograph. And instead of calling me one day, I got a catalog and there's a Horace Darwin letter. And I call up Wilson immediately and said, I need Horace Darwin's letter. And he said, fine, I'll send it to you. Horace Darwin's letter never comes. I call him back. Oh, someone made a grave error. We have another client by the name of Smith who lives in Reading, England. We sent him the Darwin letter and he sent us a check. He sent us back a check and kept it. So I'm still lacking Horace, but frankly, I'm done collecting. I'm going to close out a few minutes. This man. John Dalton Hooker was Darwin's greatest friend and confidant. They had probably 1,000 letters together. I have letters of Hooker's. I'm lucky to have one letter to Darwin, mostly social discussing, but it is of interest because Hooker discusses having photos of California. It turns out that he got these photos of California from Asa Gray, the Harvard professor who became Darwin's friend and proponent for Darwinism. Hooker traveled all over the world botanizing. One of his trips later on was to California with Asa Gray and his wife. This is a letter. This is a similar story to the petition to the road commissioners. Hooker is writing to Professor William Flower, who is a mammologist director of the British Museum of Natural History, about the need for a secretary, head of the Linnaean Society. Hooker says, they're probably going to offer me, but I can't take it. I suggest Thistleton Dyer, who was assistant at the Garden of Kew, and I suggest them. And they didn't choose his suggestion. They chose a guy who, in this letter, a guy by the name of Carruthers, who Hooker says has no, this Carruthers who got the post has no social status and has had a botanical career that was a great disappointment. But anyway, they didn't take Hooker's suggestion, they gave it to him. As I said, Hooker traveled all over the world. I'm just going to close with his book. The book is his Himalayan Journals. This is from my copy. He was an incredible story of his journeys. He was also an excellent artist. He made these drawings in the Himalaya. He made this drawing of Dr. Falconer's residence history, so what Calcutta could be like in those days. I have Falconer's autograph. I'm going to discuss him in the next lecture. That I will end there because I think I'm over my time. I'm going to end with the Hooker's illustration of the Tibet marmot from the book, and my editorial assistant Shelby Smith. She helped a great deal, and she insisted that that picture of the marmot had to be included in the lecture. There you go, Brian.
That was wonderful. Absolutely incredible. That's good. It's good to have an assistant, you know, that keeps knocking things off your desk, right?
It doesn't.
No kidding. Really?
No.
Oh.
I haven't taught her to fetch yet, but she doesn't knock things off. No.
Oh, that's very funny. That's too funny. I'm going to reclaim the host position here, and I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to keep moving right along here. Put that one right there. We'll share that right now. We'll go to this right here, and we should be good to go. Let's get this thing going here. Right from current slide. There we go. So she'll be up. Well, that was great. Let me, that was really, really terrific. I am grateful for your time and all the energy you put into it, and so much more we have to do as we move forward. So we're going to get to questions in just a moment. You can either raise your hand and I'll unmute you so you can ask the question directly, or you can type them into the question section or in the chat section, and then I'll share them with Barton, and we'll see where we go. Let's move on. So you know, when this is over, about an hour after, or released within 24 hours, if you're watching this live, which you are right here, unless you're watching it on YouTube later on, you receive an email at the conclusion of this webinar. That email will serve as your certificate of attendance. Many of our participants come and are earning continuing education credits and professional development points. The email will say, thanks for joining us. It'll name the lecture and the program and all that stuff that goes with it. You can watch this webinar as many times as you like to get another picture of Barton's kitty and all of the interesting things he shared with us tonight. We're going to post it on the Manuscript Society website. It's also be posted on our Manuscript Society's YouTube channel, so you can watch it, this one and any of the other ones we've done in the past 2 years as well. Special thanks to our special guests. Thank you, Barton is really incredible. Thanks to the trustees and the staff of the Manuscript Society for allowing me to do this, and thanks to you for being part of this amazing program. It just isn't anything unless you're there with us. There's some more stuff on the way. If there's a topic that you'd like to see here on Manuscript Monday, let me know. If you want to present a program yourself, let me know about that, and we'll figure it out. And if you want to underwrite this program and support the Manuscript Society and these programs, I'll give you all the details on how you can be an underwriter or support the Manuscript Society and Manuscript Monday as well. What's coming up next? October 2nd, the original Wikipedia, 18th century emperor, put this incredible project together, and Susan Leahy, who is an ISA certified appraiser of personal property, we'll be talking about that. On November 6th, we have Ken Glass, the inside scoop on rare book collecting. And in December, our December Manuscript Mondays, we're going to do our Thanksgiving leftovers annual year-end wrap-up. We'll see what's going on for 2024. So with that, I'll let you know, if you're not a Manuscript Society member, you can join anytime, even right now after this, we close this out, at manuscript.org. That's a great website. There's a lot of resources there. There's articles and information about what we do, how we do it, and things that can help you in your, whatever your profession happens to be, learn a little more about things like that. You need more info? You can reach me at Brian@Cathanis. That's my first name at my last name. And with that, we're going to open it up for questions. And I'm going to start off with one for you, Barton. Where did it go? Matthew asks, what were scientists called before they were called scientists again?
Natural philosophers or natural historians.
No kidding. And when did that, was there a time frame for that, when that happened?
Ewell died about 1870, so sometime in the mid 1800s.
I got it. That's great.
He coined many other terms, I think, including things like anode and cathode. He
really?
He's an amazing guy.
Scott asks, why did Darwin sign from the author? I have the Beagle book, he says. I'm not sure if I understand Scott.
Well, I've always wondered about that, but that was the other authors who there are two possible answers to that. One is either that was written by the publisher when he because sometimes these guys just ask the publisher to send the book to people they wanted to have it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes so that it's not impossible that the writing is in the handwriting of the publisher rather than Darwin himself.
Got it.
But I have documents, papers and books that from the author or with compliments of the author.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to look at other things carefully to know whether it's really the handwriting.
For sure. That's good. Good point. Good. Other questions? If there are other questions, either raise your hand or just type them right into the Q&A. Oh, here we go. Arthur says, I have the autograph of Lord Kelvin, Darwin's enemy and determining age of Earth. Thoughts about that?
Well, they weren't. Darwin was pretty mild-mannered. I think there was only one person that he really didn't like. But in fact, I think it's correct, and I have to go back and look at this. But I think it was at Kelvin's house where he met Humboldt.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
I think that's true. So they I don't think they were necessarily enemies, but Darwin always wanted Kelvin to give him more time for evolution to work.
I see. Got it. Arthur also said I have autographs of John Scopes, Darrow, and William Jennings Bryan. Arthur, check out the Manuscript Society, as you know, and there is a section where people are posting pictures of their collection and images of their collections for others to share. So we have a resource page for that too. So that would be great if you'd like to get involved in that. Good. Arthur said, what is the holy grail you desire other than first editions of The Origin of Species and Descent of Man and Horace Darwin? So anything else? I know you said you're not collecting anymore, but if you were collecting, Barton, what would you be looking for? Is there a holy grail of Darwin related?
Probably now the horse is out of the barn, I think, as far as the first edition of Origin goes. In 1985, when the Manuscript Society had a meeting in London, our annual meeting was in London, we visited Mag's brothers had a reception for us.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. And they took me in a back room and offered me, they said, here, you probably want this first edition, $12,000. Start crying. I think some have gone for 200,000 now.
I would imagine so.
Certainly it's in the six figures.
Yeah.
Which, there were probably about 570. There were a bunch. Darwin sent out, I think he sent out 50, and there were probably about 570 that were sold to the public, and a lot of them are accounted for. I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied to have the last edition that Darwin edited, which is a very interesting edition.
Great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Good. Other thoughts? Looks like we're up to date on questions here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think if I missed anything, we got that too. Closing thoughts, Barton, things that you might, suggestions for collectors or people getting into collecting. What should they be looking for? Any particular subjects or insider tips from you, an incredible collector yourself?
Easy place to get some entertainment if you're at all interested is the Darwin Correspondence Project. This was started back in around 1980, and first they published one which I have the book which was published, which was very expensive with about 6,000 letters or something like that. Wow. But now online they have documented all of the letters that are known and where they could get them. The letter itself, these are available for you to read, but there's all sorts of other information about Darwin's life on that DCP, Darwin Correspondence Project. Got it. Good deal. And a good place to start is that little book, Apes, Angels, and Victorians. Mm-hmm. It tells the story very interesting, and it's brief, concise, and it's neat.
Sounds wonderful. Very good. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to the next round. Are you going to do this chronologically as we move forward, do you think? Or are you going to pick and choose your favorites?
Well, next time, a main focus will be on Alfred Russel Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go up to the publication of The Origin and some years beyond that. But there's a lot there's something to cover in between, like Darwin's work on barnacles. But Alfred Russel Wallace and a couple other personalities, I think, will make a fascinating follow-up. Next step in Darwin's life.
We look forward to that. That'll be coming up after we finish up 2023. Thank you all for joining. Dr. Barton Smith has been our special guest. It's been delightful. We look forward to seeing you again sometime down the road, and whatever the next, whatever our next program should be. Thanks again. Thank you all for joining us. You all have a wonderful night, and we will catch you next month on Manuscript Monday.